Hello everyone, friends and subscribers, Colonel Wisdom here. This is going to be kind of a different upload than my usual. I typically don't comment on the deaths of others unless the topic is requested to me from a subscriber or something. Just because, my view on death and mortality, I don't want to say it's nonchalant. It's just that people every day die horribly, and I just don't want to get the message out there that I don't believe in putting people on pedestals. So, I don't want to get the message out there anytime a celebrity dies or anytime some type of activist dies, we just all need to cry or something. I hope I'm not sounding insensitive, and like I said, I'm typically not good at talking about things like this, but this is going to be a video response to Painlessrisen and his video on the death of Malcolm Shabazz. The title of his video is Tupacism and the Murder of Malcolm X's Grandson. I'm going to have a link to his video in the description box, but also more importantly, I'm going to have a link also in my description box of this, I believe it was 2007 interview of Malcolm Shabazz by a certain online magazine. The name escapes me right now, but it's going to be in the description box. The reason why I was compelled to respond to Painless and to talk about this topic of Malcolm Shabazz and his life in general was that while Painless made a few valid points in his video, I think that Malcolm Shabazz's issues with the law in his past really had little to nothing to do with Tupacism or just being influenced by that whole corrupt, degenerate street philosophy or whatever. Because keep in mind, as I said in one video that got flagged recently, I don't know why it got flagged, but that's neither here or there. As I said in one video, I've always felt very alienated and confused by black people who put Tupac or any other gangster rapper on a pedestal. I just don't get it, and it kind of irritates me, and those people, I just really walk away and ignore them, but that's a lot of people, so yeah. But when I was looking up some information about Malcolm Shabazz, and the only reason that sparked my interest is because I remember how this man, when he was a 12-year-old boy, how he burned his grandma. That story was global news, the nationwide news. I'm not sure if it was global news. It was definitely nationwide, and it was a big deal. At the time it happened, I was 10 years old, so I wasn't really keeping up with all the details the way all the adults in my family were. I saw it everywhere. There was even teachers in my school talking about it, but I wasn't that involved with it at the time. Excuse me. Excuse me. At the time, I presumed that, my 10-year-old brain not being developed, enough, or not paying attention to grown folks' news or murders or things that are dark and negative. I presumed that he did that to his grandmother on purpose. And so after she passed away and then after he was sentenced, I just considered it like an open and shut thing and didn't even bother to research the whole thing. And then I found out he died, and that some people were claiming that the death of Betty Shabazz was a government setup. Clearly I didn't buy that. But I decided to look it up more, and it turned out that he didn't kill her. He didn't kill her intentionally. It was manslaughter and arson. And I'm like, okay, well, that changes everything, So I decided to also look up his interviews. I preferred to read his interviews. Painless did reference his interviews in video, by the way, as you'll see, but I felt it was better to read it. And the interview that I read from him that inspired me to make this video on him was the second link in this description box. Yeah. I really only stopped at midway. I was trying to get to page 2. I think at the time I stopped reading, he was on his teen years of being in and out of juvie for breaking and entering crimes. But getting back to my original point, when I hear this man talk about his life, it seems to be like the common denominator source for his problems was his heavily dysfunctional and incompetent and abusive mother. That seems to be it. And also, guys, I really want you to read this article because it's a really moving article, and you can see this man, he takes accountability for his actions. I mean, he mentions what shaped him to take destructive paths in his youth, but he does not blame his mother. He doesn't, nor does he put his mother on a pedestal as being infallible. You know, he just tells the truth as it happened, and I really admire that. Now, he said that at some point he wanted to be back with his mother instead of being in a foster home. I can't relate to that. If I was in that situation, I wouldn't want to be anywhere near my mother. Thank God my mother was never a substance abuser. My mother was never into that. She was a responsible, productive citizen, and I'm very grateful for that, as well as her parents. They really, you know, they're all stand-up people, the majority of my family. But getting back to my original point, it is obvious that this man, him acting out in his teens was mainly due to the fact that he had no stability in his life. He just really had no hope in his childhood. I mean, I hate to put it that way. I know people overcome negative obstacles in their life, like Richard Pryor, for example. Richard Pryor went on to be one of the great legendary comedians, and his mother was a whore who, I believe, was it his mother a whore or his grandmother a whore? I think it was one or the other or both. But you know, he was raped as a little boy by their clients and their Johns and whatever. But he grew up to make something out of himself. But at the same time, he never overcame his substance abuse. There was always a part of him that was just so unhappy, where he had to escape by any means necessary, even if it meant destroying himself. He did not overcome his drug abuse until he got MS, you know, and it ended up shortening his life. I don't think he lived to be 70. So really, I think that's the main source of Malcolm Shabazz's problems. It was his mother. And I think a lot of people give his mother a pass for her negligence, and just, it really disgusted me. And you know, some people who have a problem with my YouTube commentaries, they try to, because they can't refute what I say, they try to grasp onto anything to discredit me. And they try to use my mom or bring up my mom when they don't know anything about me or my mom. You know, my mother wasn't, you know, my mother wasn't perfect. She wasn't an angel, but she wasn't a substance abuser. She wasn't promiscuous. You know, I knew who my father was. She was married before I was born. She was in a real relationship. You know, it's just things that, and I kind of thought that everybody's mother was like this, because Malcolm Shabazz was in my generation. He was just 2 years older than me at his death. I thought everybody in my generation was like this, but now, the more I research certain things on blogs, I'm seeing that everyone's not so fortunate to have, even if their father leaves them, they're not so fortunate to have a mother who has like a support network of siblings and of parents that help. You know, not just the grandma, but the grandfather too. My grandparents were married for about 56 years. If my grandfather didn't die back in 2009, they'd be married for 60 years. So, you know, I grew up with a lot of love and support in the house, and I just used to think that everybody or most black kids who didn't have a dad were like that. I was very sheltered and didn't really know. And when I read stories of child abuse, whether it's at the hands of the mother or the father, it kind of makes my blood boil. But I think more so in situations like this, just because our community puts single mothers on a pedestal. And since this is the surviving daughter of Malcolm X, of all people, and since she did see her father die right before her eyes at age 4 years old, because even Malcolm Shabazz said, he really doesn't hold any animosity towards his mother. He just thinks that she was deeply disturbed and unstable all of her life because of that experience. Now, that's not to discredit what had happened to her, but at the same time, at the same time, she was 4 years old. She wasn't 5 or older. I don't know about you guys, but I can't remember anything before age 5. Like anything at all. Well, actually, I did almost get electrocuted when I was 3 or 4 because I was in a bathroom and the lamp was on, and then I threw water on the lamp, and I got so scared of the noise it made that I backed away some. So I was safe. I didn't feel any shock or nothing, but yeah, I think that's the earliest memory I have. Then I have some memories of getting out of, my crib and walking to my mom while my mom's trying to get on the couch and watch some horror movies, and then she keeps putting me back. I do remember like some little things like that, but I don't know. By and large, I don't really know. I'm sorry for going off on so many tangents. This is why I don't make videos about topics like this. I don't think I'm very good at making topics that are really serious, that involve a loss of life. But my overall rebuttal to Painless was just that, the guy, poor Malcolm Shabazz, even if you take out, who his grandfather was, if he was just any old normal person, a white guy going through something like this, who led his life, a white guy would probably grow up to be a serial killer, or a woman of any race having a life like this would probably grow up, to be some type of crack whore or something. Like, it's just, things aren't, if you take the father out of the equation, things aren't hopeless. I am a firm believer in nuclear families above all. But then I think the second best option, if you can't have a nuclear family because the parents split up, would be, an extended family. Some people say the next best option is single motherhood, but, I don't know. And like I'm saying, I know that there's people out there that have been raised primarily just by their mother, and their mother was fine. And even if their mother was poor and did do odd jobs, they weren't alcoholics. They weren't people who beat their kids, or who neglected their children, or who didn't hug their children. They did the best they could, and their kids grow up decent. But then you have situations like this, where the mother just clearly is just a very flighty and flaky person, and a very insecure and unstable person who just should not have a child. Like, we see a lot of that around, and it's not being called out. I've seen some comments on this young man's death, and people are either blaming it on the government. Well, first of all, I think at one point in your video you said that he got thrown out a window. No, that didn't happen. He got beaten to death outside of a bar. Now, whether the guys were robbing him or not, I don't know. Or rather, they singled him out because he was black and they were racist. I really don't know. I haven't done much research on his death so much as his life in general. And while I don't agree with people... Hold on a second. While I don't agree with people calling him a martyr per se, or a leader, I do think he had a lot of potential, and right before his death he was getting his life back on track, and he would have been somebody who could have really benefited his community with mentoring, because there's a lot of black children out there who are in his similar situation as a child or worse, and they need guidance, and they need to know not to go down the path he went on, and they need to know that there are more things out there for you, just because you may come from dysfunction, or you may have your mother is just, incompetent, your dad's not around, it doesn't mean all hope is gone for you. I think a lot of black kids need to hear that and need to know that. And I think he had the potential to sort of create that, because unfortunately, I think children are brighter than we give them credit for. And so even if their parents fail, if they just have the motivation and if they have the knowledge to realize that they can still do good for themselves despite those circumstances, and I think we'd see a brighter future. So while he wasn't a martyr, I do think he had a lot of potential. It's a real tragic thing that this happened to him. I don't know why these people beat him up. As I said, I don't think it was. From what I've read, he's never sold poison in his community. I have a very strong aversion to people who sell poison in their communities. I think it just really, again, it's another thing that makes my blood boil, or drug dealers and dope boys and people who date dope boys. I can't stand them at all. He didn't do that. As far as I know, he didn't assault anyone or kill anyone, obviously. I mean, he killed his grandmother. But again, he said that he set a fire in the house. His grandma walked through it to save him. And that's what happened. He didn't intentionally set his grandma on fire, like I've believed for all these years, and just accepted it. So, that's all I wanted to say. So yeah, I agree that he wasn't. I really doubt he was killed by the government. Although, considering the comments he made, I could see he's made in Islamic media overseas. I can see why people would think that. But, at the same time, I want to see physical, tangible evidence that the government just went out of their way to kill him. Clearly, I don't think the government killed his grandma. And I don't think he's a martyr. But, again, it was really sad that as soon as he learned to put his pain behind him, that this happened to him. Because there's a lot of black children out there that don't know how to put the pain of their failing parents behind them, and their poverty behind them. They really don't understand that, and they could have really benefited from that. And that's all I want to say. Colonel is out. See you later.